Okay. I wanted to share a bit about Cambodia. I felt like I wanted to share this because Cambodia has actually been a really, you've put me in a real kind of mood. I wanted to share this because Cambodia has been a really important part of my life for the last sort of 12, 13 years. And sorry, you're going to have to forgive me. It's been one of those weeks where like everything's just come at once and it's been really busy, and I got like extra work that I wasn't expecting and things like that, but it's been awesome. And I had a wonderful time with Tim and Eleanor's children on Thursday night so they could go out and celebrate Eleanor's birthday. And so it's just been a week of a lot. So forgive me if I'm a little bit scattered, but I'm going to use the PowerPoint to help guide me because that's kind of how I was working while I was putting it together. So I want to share about Cambodia. I know some of you might not have a lot of knowledge of the country or perhaps experience there. So I'm glad that I can at least share some of what I experienced when I lived there for a couple of years back in 2018 to 2020. But I want to just share sort of how that came about as well, and things that I learnt over that time, and the trips that I'd done previously to Cambodia. I'm actually heading there not this coming Tuesday, but the following, so about a week and a half from now. I'll be going for about 10 to 11 days. And I'll share why I'm going and the importance of that. But I guess that's kind of how that came up for me to share about Cambodia. So, all right, let's get into it. Thanks, Paul. All right, so I want to kind of mention how this came about. So I definitely had a desire to do missions back when I was like 19, 20 years old. I remember at my very first church, we had a group from YWAM come along, and they shared with our youth group and sort of just shared about missions and that kind of thing. And I thought, wow, like this sounds so big and so crazy and bigger than I thought I would be able to do, you know. You kind of doubt yourself sometimes when something like an opportunity comes in front of you. You kind of go, oh, could I really do this? Don't know, not sure. But I did have a desire for missions, but in my head I was like, don't send me to Asia. I don't know why I didn't want to go to Asia, but I was like, don't send me to Asia, God. I wanted to go to South America because I thought that would be like a fun place to do missions. So, you know, I know I've shared some of this with some of you, but yeah, God's definitely got a sense of humour. I can tell you now, if you don't want something to happen, don't talk to God about it, because he'll most likely make it happen. It'll be part of your journey. That's what I've sort of experienced. It's like, you know, there's been things that he's just put in my path that I've gone, why would you do that to me? This isn't what I asked for. But, you know, he knows what's best. He knows what's best. His way is better than our way. So, Anyway, back in 2009, I visited a church that where I met Amanda and Steve, actually. Before I knew them, though. I went along. I was kind of like trying to find a new church because I was feeling as though my time at my first church was coming to an end, and I didn't want to just sort of go meandering around the place. I wanted to definitely know where I was meant to be. And during one of the Sundays that I went to this particular church, Breakthrough Centre, which then became Nexus Centre, there was a prophecy spoken over me by Peter Christensen, who some of you might have heard of, some of you might not. And I went up the front because he was saying, if someone's got a sore shoulder, come up the front. So I went up because I had a sore kind of neck, shoulder area. He didn't pray for that. He spoke over my life and said, you know, I see you working with children, I see worship. And then he said, and I see you going to Asia. And I laughed in his face because I was like, nope, you got that one wrong. Kids, yes. Worship, yes. No, not happening. Lo and behold, probably like 18 months later, I was on a plane to Cambodia. During that 18 months, God did a real change in my heart, really turned things around. And I remember probably about a year after the prophecy, we were having like a worship night for Cambodia at the church. It was quite late as well. and God birthed something in me. And I say that because there was a groaning that came out of me like it was childbirth. And I don't know if anyone's seen or experienced that before, but you can't stop it happening. When you submit to God and when the Spirit takes over and that kind of thing, you can't stop that. And so I remember I was facing a wall in the corner on my knees, literally like groaning as if I was in childbirth. So God was birthing something in me for Cambodia. And then, 6 months later, I had my first trip. So we'll go to the next slide. Just to introduce the sort of leaders in the church that I worked with mostly. So Pastor Mawan and Mom. So they are the senior leaders of the church Nexus Centre Cambodia, and have been a mother and a father to me for many years. And Mom particularly, when I was living there, I used to live, in the first year I was living above their apartment, and Mom and I would go, I'd meet her down and sit on this little bench, and she'd speak in broken English and I'd speak in broken Khmer, and we'd have these little conversations. And obviously over time my Khmer improved so we could actually converse a bit more, but it was just a beautiful relationship that we had from the very beginning. Pastor Mawan, I remember praying for him one time on my first trip, and I remember putting my hand on where his heart was, and I just burst into tears. I couldn't actually even pray for him because I just felt the absolute love that he has for his country and the people in his country. So he actually ended up praying for me. Now, the other couple, Bunna and Danny, I absolutely love. They are my brother and sister over there. They have taken such good care of me when I've been there. Danny is actually Mawan's daughter from his first marriage, and she and Bunna met when they were working together years ago. It's a bit of a funny story, and if you ever get a chance to meet them, which I hope they'll get a chance to come over, maybe they can share how they met, because it's a bit of an interesting one. Bunna has been kind of like my ministry partner while I was over there, my big brother, my translator, my, shoulder to cry on at times. He's a wonderful man. He's a very creative man. He has lots and lots of ideas, doesn't always know how to put them into place, but God's definitely put a big creative mind within him, and he, if he gets some inspiration, he's just like, let's go do it. Even though we might be in the middle of some other project, he's like, nope, God's telling us to do this, So it was a little bit manic sometimes working with Bunna, but I love him. I'm very, very much looking forward to having time with him and his family. They've got 3 children. Marina, who's about 13 now, which blows me away. Ezra, who I think is turning 10 this year, and then Adonai, who is 4. And they're amazing. I have such a heart for that family. Okay, next one. Okay, so first couple of trips we had, 2010 was my very first trip. It was for about a week. You can see an arrow pointing to someone. Amanda. So that was both of our first trip over there, and we had some really special moments, got a chance to kind of do some tourist sort of stuff together, and pray together and all that. There, you can see a very tall guy at the back in the middle with a blue sort of singlet on. That's Kevin. Kevin was sort of one of the young adults leaders, and he very often led teams with younger groups of people over to Cambodia. He's actually living there at the moment, so he's been there since about January this year, doing some teaching and playing rugby and doing lots of travel and things over there. So during my first trip, one of the places we went to was Takayo, and Takayo is, if I can remember correctly, I believe it's southwest of Phnom Penh. And there's a church there called, I don't know the name of the church actually, but the pastor is Pastor Somvion, and he is such a joyful, beautiful man, and he's had so many struggles, but God has also blessed him mightily. And one of his kids is this girl that I've circled in red, Putti, Sovan Putti, and so you can see there she's probably about maybe 11, 12 years old there or something. She's now sort of mid-20s, and she's actually teaching. in a school that they've set up in their church. She does that in the afternoons after she goes to uni. Well, this is what was happening when I was there anyway. She might have finished her studies. But she was studying in the morning at uni to become a teacher, and then essentially she was having a work experience because they'd set up an English school at their church. So I've actually been working with Butti and doing some training with her, so you'll see some of that later on. But it was amazing to kind of see this young girl in my first trip, and then when I lived there several years later, like seeing her as a young woman and you know, doing what God had put on her heart. So, all right, next one, thanks. All right, a couple of other trips I did. In 2012, there was a ladies' trip that we had. There were, I think, 5 of us ladies. I was the youngest by probably 15 to 20 years, and I kind of, during the trip, felt like, what am I doing here? All these women are married and or have been married and have kids, and they've got all this experience to share with, you know, with the ladies, because we had like a women's conference in Cambodia. And I felt very inadequate and very like confused about why I was there. But the lady on the very end, Bjorg, she said to me, you know, during the conference, she was like, Claire, you demonstrated to those other young ladies what it is to serve, because I was kind of running around giving people water and making sure everyone was okay and this sort of thing. And she said, you know, that was definitely something that needed to be demonstrated to the other young ladies who were present. And anyway, I loved being there. Amanda's mum's actually the one in the middle in the sort of orange shirt and tan pants. So that was wonderful to experience that with her as well and learn from her and the other ladies. The picture on the right was in 2013, and I think actually Steve and Amanda, you both came on that one, I think, when we went to the school and did some teaching. You did sports teaching? Yeah. So, and Amanda did some English teaching in a primary class. So this was kind of my first opportunity to see what a school is like in Cambodia, you know, see what a government school was like. Or actually, I think a government school, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so that was an eye-opener. And yeah, as I said, Amanda had a chance to do some teaching as well. But that kind of started something in me regarding education and what I could possibly bring to Cambodia in some way. Next slide, please. Had a couple of other trips. So 2014, which I was grateful to go with Joan and Mama Christine, who are in the left-hand picture. That was kind of, for me, a little bit of a consolidation in terms of my relationship with people and just feeling really sort of quite grounded in Cambodia. So that's why I kind of put it as a consolidation trip. And then in 2015, I actually got the chance to lead a team to Cambodia. It was a bit of a mishmash team. We literally had, so you can see myself on the left-hand side. The lady in the middle with the lighter shirt, that's Kristen. So I knew Kristen. She was from my church. There were 3 other people that came with us. Had never met them until we got to Cambodia. One of them was Kristen's friend from Norway, so that's the lady with the long blonde hair and the dark shirt. And then there was a mum and a son from Kalgoorlie, so you can see Michelle in the middle with the red shirt and then her son behind her. Never met them. So it was this real like interesting collection of people, but I tell you what, that was such an amazing trip. That's probably my favourite trip because it was, you know, a chance to really connect with the young people, to see God move in ways that I wasn't expecting. Kristen became my prayer partner, so when we were leading prayers and stuff, sometimes like I'd say something and then I'd go, nah, she's got something, and I'd just tap her on the shoulder or whatever and she'd straight away get into it, and it was just amazing to kind of tag team off someone in that way. Yeah, I really, really loved that trip, and I think that was one of the trips that sort of really stirred in me that this is a place I could possibly live. This is somewhere that I feel very comfortable. I love the people. Yeah. Okay, next one. All right, last trip before I actually moved over there. So I spent 3 weeks in Cambodia staying with Bunna and Danny and their family, and to the point where the day after I left, their middle child, Ezra, kind of looked at this is what I got told, at dinner time, he looked around and he was like, something's missing. So, I really became family during this time. One of the things that I did during that trip was go to this school on an island, which is in a province bordering bordering Vietnam. And this school had been established by the church in Phnom Penh, and is called Nexus English Centre. So I got a chance to go there and sort of see what it was like in one of those more remote or rural sort of schools. And in that picture, I'm teaching the children, what's the time, Mr. Wolf? So they're all lined up, ready to go, and then someone was going to call out, what's the time, Mr. Wolf? This was when God really put it on my heart to go and live there. So it was about 12 months before I actually moved. And I just knew at that point. And I remember starting school that year and going and speaking to my principal and saying, I'm not coming back next year. I don't know how long it's going to be, but essentially I'm going to take a year's leave without pay at that point and then make a decision. But I was pretty sure I wasn't coming back. So, well, that's what I thought. All right. So moving to Cambodia, it was exciting. I think I went with this mentality that I knew everything, that I was this white saviour kind of thing, which was so wrong, and I don't recommend ever doing that. If you go to a country that has a completely different culture, etc., don't go there thinking you know everything and you have all the answers, because you will be mistaken and put in your place by God or others. But that's okay. That was one of the things I learned. But I loved being there. It was a real journey. We did a lot of things in the 2 years I was there. So I've just got some photos to demonstrate some of the activities that I was involved with. So one of them was obviously food distribution to some of the really poorer communities or rural communities that maybe were struggling. So we would do that. We would go to remote churches and pray with them and minister and build up leaders in those churches and try and sort of make them sustainable as well in terms of spiritual maturity. I haven't quite finished, sorry. That's all good. I'm going back, yep. Another thing that we got a chance to do was to help teams from other countries. So Buna had some connections with the UK, so we had some teams from the UK come out and do some training and do some ministry out there as well. So we've got the group on the left were from Stopsley Baptist, which is in Luton. If anyone knows Luton as an area, it is a very rough area. There's a lot of it's very multicultural. There's some low socioeconomic families and things. So they do a really wonderful job in that church actually supporting people in the community. And then we've got Forest Town Church, and they did some work with different leaders and groups as well when they came to visit. Okay, next slide, thanks. All right, loved working with the children. I did a lot of kids ministry while I was there, not necessarily me teaching, but me supporting or me being part of that. So we would do, celebrations like Christmas where we would give gifts to the kids. We would teach them songs. We would, do lessons from the Bible with them. They're amazing at memorizing Bible verses. I think kind of what Mary was saying about how a lot of their stories and things are passed down by word of mouth, so therefore they have to remember, because they don't read it necessarily, they hear it and they listen and they remember that way. So their memory is amazing, and so a lot of them actually could stand up and recite 10 Bible verses, no problems, just one after the other, bang, bang, bang. So that's incredible that they can memorize them in that way. That challenged me. I was like, I don't know if I can memorize 10 Bible verses and just pull them out. But I loved working with the kids. I learned a lot of words surrounding sort of working with children and in classrooms and things. So a lot of my vocabulary was actually quite simplified in that way, because then I could, have conversations with the children. Okay, thank you. Another thing that, or other things that we did were we had fun days, so sack races and stuff. That was actually during Khmer New Year in 2019, which happens in April. It's meant to only be over 3 days. It kind of runs into 2 weeks because they go, well, if this is a holiday that we're allowed to take, then we're going to milk it for all it's worth. For some people, actually, Khmer New Year is the only time they get a chance to go back to their families in the remote communities and spend time with their families, because they, essentially, if they don't work, they don't make money and they don't eat and they don't have a house and all that sort of thing. So it is actually really, unfortunately, there's not any welfare sort of support unless you have a physical disability, like you are perhaps, your legs have been blown off by a landmine or something and you're in a wheelchair. You might get some welfare from the government, but there's not a lot of support. So if you don't work, you don't survive. So for 2 weeks every year, basically, families will go back to their, their hometowns and spend time with their parents and other family members and stuff. So, did that, had some fun with the kids. We had some leadership training. So in the middle at the top, you can see everyone's wearing this particular shirt. That was because we had this sort of, I think it was like 3 to 5 days of training with a ministry called Radstock Ministry, which is a global network of churches, and they essentially do leadership training and church planting training as well. So we did some of that. I'm doing some teacher training with some older kids in the, or I shouldn't say older kids, young adults, sorry, in the left corner. Island School, the lovely green classroom, which is a bit of an eyesore, so we actually ended up painting it a very nice blue colour, one of the projects we did. Kids ministry and stuff. So we also did water baptisms and other, preaching the gospel, so we're involved with going to different places and sharing about God, helping people build houses. So you can see in the bottom middle, very simple materials, but everyone gets involved, using like thatched sort of walls and roofs and things. That was an interesting experience, actually. That took a whole day, but they essentially built a house in a day for this lady who was a widow. And she was previously living out of this little wooden shack. It was nothing. There was no cover from any sort of rain or anything. She would have been, would have just gotten damaged with a bit of a gust of wind. So the community got together and they built this house for her in a day. So that was incredible to see that. And, encouraging the children in their walk with God as well, teaching them to pray and the importance of prayer. So there's a lot of different things we got involved with, and it's still happening in Cambodia, not just while I was there. How are we going? Am I talking too much? I should have said before, sorry. I do want to give, if there's time, opportunities for questions. If anyone's got questions they want to ask, or you can see me after the service or something, I'm happy to, share. So some of the projects that we got involved with, my number one focus was education, as I said. So what we kind of put together was this English education program, but it wasn't just about teaching English. It was about building into the children in their, their walk with God, their understanding of who God is and the kingdom. And so we would actually, when I worked with teachers on that, I would try to sort of incorporate kingdom principles, and you're not just teaching a kid some knowledge, you're building into who they are in God, what their identity is, and demonstrating love to them. And so it was a bit more than that. It was a little bit more holistic, a little bit more holistic in that way. I only got, I think, 2 levels of that done. We were wanting to do up to sort of 5 or 6 levels of that English program. Only managed to finish 2 before I ended up coming back here, but that's all right. That's been actually valuable. I've seen it being used in schools around Cambodia now, so I'm grateful that has actually happened. I would do formal teacher training, so kind of like if you go to professional development, I'd sort of, run these 3-day courses, and we would accommodate teachers from rural and remote communities to come and be part of that. I really loved that. That was an amazing thing to have that opportunity to share with them and build into their teacher training, because a lot of them, basically, there might be an opportunity to teach, but there's no training because there's no university near them, or they don't have the money to go to university. So it was basically an opportunity for them to get some free training. Okay. Another project would be the building of wells. So I haven't necessarily been involved in the building of wells, but I've financially contributed to that. So if that's something that you would like to support, you can definitely come speak to me about that. There's a photo, I think, of one of the wells that we've helped finance. And that's really amazing because that gives opportunities for jobs, in the community. So when you do, provide the finances for the building of the wells, that provides construction jobs and that kind of thing for the people in that community. So it is a good thing. We had some churches in the UK finance the building of homes for widows and orphans, and also a rice storage. So when the crops are ready and the rice comes in, they can store it there, and then people in that community can use that, come and use that rice. So that sort of thing has happened. As I mentioned, the church planting and leadership training through Radstock and other ministries. And one of the things that Bunna and I particularly were working towards was actually building a training centre in Phnom Penh to accommodate people from rural communities to come in and learn certain trades, but also learn how to run a Bible study or something as well. So, obviously having that, foundation in there as well. Bunna has a degree in hospitality and tourism. I obviously have the education. We had other people who were involved or who wanted to link up, and they had business or finance sort of backgrounds. So that's still in the works. It's definitely still something that we're looking towards, but obviously because of COVID and different things, that's been delayed since we started. All right, so I just got some photos just to show you of some of those projects. So this is me doing the English program. So I actually filmed it. It would be filmed every single lesson, which I hated. I hate being on film. So I'm not a fan of this thing in front of my face, but that's all right. But it was a way of us actually creating a resource that could then be passed on to communities and schools in the rural areas. So we had different activities. They'd do some writing. We'd learn songs, so they were learning Christian songs, so learning English through that. Yep. And games and role plays and things like that. So the game, you can see me and the other student on the ground. Essentially, it's kind of like, it was a little bit like, what's that? Twister, a little bit like Twister, but we were using clothing items. So they'd been learning about the different words for clothes in English. So it would be, right hand dress, left foot shoes or something. And so we sort of did that as a bit of a game. And they would get opportunities to then also, draw or write on the board if we were doing, different activities. So yeah, tried to make it really interactive because schools over there, particularly in the rural communities, are incredibly simple. So you essentially read from a book as a teacher, you teach from a book, you write on the board, the kids record it, you repeat the stuff, they stand up and repeat it after you, and they're expected to remember it, and that's it. There's no there's very little, quite often, group activities or paired activities. There's not a lot of critical or creative thinking. So I wanted to kind of try and incorporate a little bit more of that into the program, so it was something different, because that is valuable. When children get a chance to work together, to be creative, to question things, then they do learn better that way. But culturally, it's not something that young people are encouraged to do. You do not question people who are older than you, even if they're wrong. So young people in schools essentially just, whatever they're told, that's what they believe, or that's what they think is true. So Yeah. All right, teacher training. So just showing you some of the photos of the formal teacher training that I did, demonstrating games and things they can do. So they would, get some practice actually doing those. So that one in the bottom left-hand corner is just about directions. So left, right, back, forward, etc. And they had to listen to the instructions and try not to touch certain objects that were on the ground. You can see in the top right corner, Buti now, or probably back in 2019. So, the young girl that I circled in one of the first photos, that's her grown up as a, teacher in training. So, and then the top left corner is actually her classroom in the church. So you can sort of see I was observing and giving some feedback. So I'm sitting there writing notes to share with her later. And so that was one of the other things that I would do. I would go out and observe teachers doing their work, and then give them feedback on how they were going, things that they could improve in, etc. So some of the things in the teacher training that we would look at were like, what is the characteristic, or what are characteristics of a good teacher, and also like thinking about what inspires them to teach, which I think is really important. I don't think you should be a teacher if you are not inspired to do it, or if you don't have an understanding of what would make an effective teacher, essentially. And then, a couple of the other games and activities that I'd bring in. Some schools don't have a lot of resources in terms of paper and pencils and things like that, but there's plastic straws everywhere. So I came up with the idea to cut up plastic straws for the students to then use in order to make letters. So they might not have pens and papers, but if they've got other materials like that, bottle caps, etc., they can use those as resources to teach lettering and words and that kind of thing. So use what you got. Just go back one for a moment. I love this game. This is one of my favourite games. So it was like you wrote words that they'd been learning up on the board in random spots, and then you'd have 2 lines of students, and the kids at the front would have a fly swatter, because again, use what you've got. And you'd say, okay, and you'd give them the word. So let's say if we were doing colours, you'd go green, and the 2 kids would run up and then try and find the word green and try and swat it first. It was a little bit of a competition in that way. So, just trying to teach them in an interactive way, something a bit different. Okay, thanks. Couple more photos. Sorry about the formatting. I forgot to fix that. So you can see the well that they've got, rainwater tanks and wells and things like that. So there's an example there. The top images are actually the process of building a classroom, which has recently been built in Pai Lin, which is if you're looking at a map this way, northern border of Thailand. So Pai Lin borders Thailand in the north. So you can see they start with, just the sort of structures, and build it up with the bricks, etc., and then finally bringing in the tables and chairs. You've got how I mentioned churches in UK were financing houses for widows and orphans, so that's the House of Hope and the Barn of Hope. And then just some images of the houses and what they look like. So they've actually built 3 houses next to each other for the widows and the orphans to live in and support each other and kind of build a community in that way. Thank you. Okay, and then I've got some plans here for the training centre that I mentioned before, which is we're hoping to have based in Phnom Penh. We've actually bought the land, so we do actually own the land. We just haven't necessarily been able to build the finances just yet to actually start the construction. The other thing is that it's not necessarily easy to get the government approval for different things, so we're still working through the kind of official stuff, yeah. But you can see that we're planning a 3-leveled building. The bottom level is going to be sort of where, I think that's the top right-hand corner. It's going to be kind of one of the training rooms, or the training room where we'll do, we'll have like a projector that, teachers can, or those training can use for presentations, and there'll be an office space, there'll be a cafe, so we'll have some people being able to be employed and practice their hospitality skills. And then we've also got some rooms up the top for those who might be training or staying at that building. And then we were going to build a dormitory sort of next to it, which we haven't got to yet. But the dormitory was going to be for the students to come and live on site. So there you go. So that's that. All right. I hope I'm not going too long. I don't know what the time is, but lessons that I learnt while living there. Oh, is it? Okay, I'll try and be quick. All right, so first of all, don't be afraid to go against what you think might be normal, what other people might think is normal. Step out of the boat. Don't be afraid. God is faithful. I think I really, really learnt that there. Even when you can't see it, even when you don't know what's going on, you don't know what the end result is going to be, God is faithful. As I mentioned before, be slow to speak, quick to listen. Don't think that you have all the answers, and be humble in that. This is if you're someone who's thinking about missions, or it's on your heart. One really big lesson that I learned and that I thought was important was purpose. If there's not purpose in something, if God doesn't give you that purpose in it or show you that purpose in it, you really shouldn't do it. There were times where I would say yes to something, like going off to be part of something, and then later on question, like, why did I even go? I didn't feel like I was meant to be there. So I started to kind of take note of that from the Holy Spirit in terms of purpose. Submission. This was something I was praying out last night when I was at another church, that there's actually, God will honour your submission, and there's also power in submission. God can work through that. It's obviously like you are humbling yourself, but God then lifts you up and empowers you in that. So if you do end up doing any missions, be open to opportunities. So don't just kind of go, well, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm going to do, and that's it. And if something comes across my path, I'm gonna go, no, this is what God's called me to do. Yes, but just be open to it. You never know what will happen, because sometimes God will put a different opportunity across your path, and and be ready for change, because things won't always turn out the way you expect them to. Okay. I just have some info about my upcoming trip. So definitely I'll want to reconnect with the families and people that I had connections with over there. That's a big part of me going over. I have 2 boxes of stuff that was left there when I came back in March. So I need to sort through those things. I want to kind of work with either some of the new teachers that have begun teaching in the last year or so, and also go and visit the ones that I had supported previously. I feel like there's going to be a bit of a change in that, and I don't exactly know what that is. Like, even speaking now, I'm kind of feeling like there's a stirring in my spirit, and I don't know what it's going to mean, so I do require some prayer from you, from family, relating to that, to just be sensitive to whatever God reveals to me. There might be some closing of doors, and there might be some openings of new ones, so I just need to have wisdom in that. So prayer points, please, while I'm away. If you want to be involved, if you want to pray with me and kind of follow me while I'm over there and that kind of thing, I'm happy to link up with you in some way. If you want to financially support anything happening that I've mentioned, or if you think in future you'd like to even be a human resource and go over there and do some training, or support in an actual physical way, then maybe we can talk about perhaps a trip in future. Who knows? Okay, I'm putting it out there. I definitely need clarity and wisdom for the time that I'm there, to recognise whatever opportunities might come up, or what doors need to close, what doors need to open, etc. Protection while I'm travelling. I haven't been there for 2.5 years, so my stomach's probably westernised now, and hopefully I won't have too many issues with that. And also things like, while I'm travelling, just that my luggage arrives on time and things, because obviously there's been some issues with that recently. Protection of my heart, because one of the things I always found going to and from Cambodia was that my heart would be so connected there that when I came back to Perth, I really struggled being here, and I would lose it at people, and I'd just be like, why is everyone so selfish here? And like I'd just go off and yeah, so I wasn't very fun to be with when I'd come back from Cambodia. So yeah, protection of my heart, that, you know, I'm there when I'm there, my heart's there when I'm there, but my heart then comes back with me here to Perth. And just a unity in the spirit with Bunna and other people that I'm going to work with, just that there won't be, you know, clashes and people kind of going, oh, why aren't you staying here now? What's going on? You know, you lived here before, why can't you live here again, or anything like that. So just that they would understand that my life has changed now, and I feel like God has called me to be here more permanently, but that doesn't necessarily mean I won't do trips over there every now and then. So yeah, so just that unity and that love to be continued. So I just wanted to, obviously we haven't got time for questions now, which is fine, but I just wanted to share that with you because it has been a really big part of my life, and hopefully it's either inspired some people here to consider missions, and I can tell you now, age is not a limit, because in the women's trip we had a lady in her 70s, and she came and she still went to the squat toilets and things like that. And, you know, she was able to do a week there, even with her age and health things. And she was amazing, and it was such an experience for her. So I just want to put that out there as well. Don't think that, you know, if you're in your older years, doesn't mean you can't still do great things for God.